What's up, family? Welcome in. Today, I want to do a real quick video on three things that I've noticed that people tend to pull from their relationship with Christianity. Now, again, I don't intend to be making these as blanket generalizations, but just instead, just some observations that I have made. And I'd be curious to know if you've seen some of the same things, or maybe if you'd be willing to call out some things that I perhaps did not include in my list. Before we get started, please make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so that you're always abreast of the alerts, and consider joining our Patreon community or our YouTube membership community. We got great things coming down the pike. Got it right that time. All right, so let's jump into this. The first thing that I see that a lot of Christians pull from their relationship with their religion is enemies. And it's kind of baked into the theology, right? I mean, there's the devil, there's an enemy. But then there's also demons. Those are also enemies, and some people delineate between demons and spirits, evil spirits. But then there's also not just the Antichrist, but then you also have antichrists and false Christs. And of course, these are all enemies. And, these are enemies of the biblical sort. And then there's also witches. The Bible does, let you know that witches are not okay. As a matter of fact, you should not permit them to live. Again, these things are kind of baked into the theology. And then also other religions. Other religions for many Christians, are the enemies of their faith because they worship another God. And of course, again, that's something that's actually baked into the theology because, of course, throughout most of the Old Testament, that's what a lot of these battles were about. I get to kill you because you don't worship my God, which is always funny to me when I hear Christians say that, Islam is such a violent religion. I'm like, aren't you the pot calling the kettle black? But let's continue. Also, not just other religions, but even other denominations. There are many Christian denominations who see those other denominations as enemies, villainizing them. I mean, just look at how much of the Christian world treats Jehovah's Witnesses. Sin is also an enemy, right? So you're getting a lot of enemies out of this relationship. Mind you, this is supposed to be a relationship that's based on love, at least based off of the gospel message that many seeker-friendly churches and grace-friendly churches preach. That this is this all loving God who just loves everybody, and he wants everybody to be in this loving relationship. But one of the first things you're going to get out of this relationship is a bunch of enemies that this relationship tells you are your enemies. So there's sin, but then there's also sinners, not all the time, but many times. People who are Christians can begin to view people who sin as their enemies, literally looking at someone who sins as someone who's done something wrong to you, even if that sin had absolutely nothing to do with you. All right. Sinners, drugs. Like, yeah, drugs are an enemy. Christians, ooh, they don't like drugs. Oh no. Literally launched a whole war against it. That happened here in the States. Women, like, yeah, like, and I know this one isn't as obvious, but it should be. I mean, the treatment of women in the Bible and the treatment of women throughout Christian history, throughout church history, is absolutely deplorable. I find the impact of the Christian doctrine on the psychology of participating women to be a crime against humanity. And okay, is another enemy. Anyone who acknowledges faults in their beliefs. Oh, you're an enemy. You're an enemy. And anyone who rejects their advances. And if you're a part of the urban churches, then haters. Haters are also enemies. You're going to hear about that a lot. And I say these things somewhat facetiously, but the last few years that I actually was involved with church, my wife and I did start to notice, like, wow, a lot of these messages are enemy centric, whether you're talking about the enemy that's the devil, or the enemies on your jobs, or the enemies, who's denying you credit, or even the enemies sitting on the very same row with you. Yes, preachers preach like this in what is supposed to be a house of love. Oh, that took me to 5 heartbeats. Okay. So, enemies. I don't think I need to belabor that point any further. But then there's another thing that a lot of Christians seem to get from their relationship with their religion, and that is excuses. And quite a bit of excuses at that. So let's we'll just kind of walk through the list a little bit. Um, what are some things that Christians get excuses for? For God's misbehavior. You say, hold up, this God killed his own creation. Oh, well, there's a reason for that. Oh, this God put the people in the Garden of Eden, told them they could eat everything, but then told them that they couldn't eat one thing, and then had a cherubim who could stop them from eating it, but he decided not to use the cherubim to stop them from eating the tree, but to use the cherubim to keep them from ever going back to the Garden of Eden. Oh yeah, they're going to give excuses for this. God got a young girl pregnant while she was engaged to be married to somebody else, and this is the God that is supposed to be against adultery. So you do that, and the excuses are going to roll out. But then not only excuses for God's misbehavior in scripture, but also for God's absence, also for errors in scripture, also for bad behavior in scripture that's not God's. Like David, you talk about what David did, and they said, but he was a man after God's own heart. Okay, whatever. This dude prayed about smashing babies against the rocks. That is not a good guy. Even according to Jesus' standards, that's not a good guy. All right. For bad behavior in scriptures, for the absence of miracles. No, you're not getting those miracles because you're not desperate enough. You're not getting those miracles because you're not truly seeking, because we all know that seeking is some type of cryptic hide and seek game where you actually have to know the proper way to seek. And nobody's actually going to give you those instructions. They're not really there. It's a hit or miss type of thing. Those are typically the type of excuses that get associated with that. For slavery, yes. For bigotry, yes. For prejudice, yes. For sexism, yes. You will find an abundance of excuses from many Christians. Again, not all Christians, but many indeed, such as we've seen with the recent political upheavals in the states. Um, for Christ's failure to return. Oh my goodness, you're going to hear so many excuses. And one of the biggest one is, well, no man knows the day or the hour. Well, stop saying you know the day or the hour. That's an easy one. For the bad behavior of their leaders. We've seen this in the Catholic Church, but we honestly we've seen this in all churches, and I like to remind people that these things don't just impact church. Christians don't just affect church. Believers don't just affect church. Humans don't just affect church. This is why I often remind people that it's not religion that is the problem per se. It is our superstitious inclinations that attach to our religions, which is why the very same problems that you will find in any church, you will also find in any political system, you will also find in any corporate system, right? Because it's not that church is creating all of these problems. Church is an inactive agent. It is us. We are the problem. All right. For the bad behaviors of their believers, yeah, yeah. And for their own bad behavior, they make excuses. I think one of the most facetiously famous ones. Man, I wish I can remember the guy's name. Can't remember it right now, but I can see him in my head. The devil made me do it. So you get all types of excuses. Now, no one really uses that one seriously, but you'll find some a lot close to it. And even though I said no one uses that one seriously, I've actually counseled a lot of people who have had extramarital affairs, and that was their reason. The devil just got in me, Pastor. You don't understand. I was doing so good, and the devil started talking in my mind. Bruh, that wasn't the devil, that was you. You were looking at them hips, lips, and fingertips, and you started thinking about some things, and you know, you know. So excuses. But then there's a third one: exaggerations. I find okay, so we find that Christians get enemies from their religion. They get excuses from their religions, but we also see they get exaggerations from their religions. And so Christians tend to make exaggerations about miraculous claims. Christians tend to make exaggerations about moral claims. You see this a lot. Um, Definitely, I've been impacted personally by this. Christians tend to make a lot of exaggerations about financial claims. Oh, I got this, I have this, I've done this well. And it's like, who are you trying to impress? Um, Family claims. Oh yeah, we got a praying family. The family that prays together stays together. Oh yeah, our family's been doing this for so long, and then you start actually, oh like, oh no, y'all suck like everybody else. Oh okay. Health claims. Which also goes into the miraculous, but then just some other things. There's no, I don't even want to go there. Ugh. And then relationship claims. Like there have been so many Christians I've been around who just could not help name dropping and exaggerating relationships with people that they claim to have that they actually did not have, the extent of that relationship. Which of course, I look at that because I do believe in part that our inclination to superstition is in part dealing with our own childishness, a childishness that we haven't dealt with yet, but it's a childishness that we can deal with and deal with rather quickly, you know. But until we do deal with it, is we're going to be preoccupied with a lot of petty stuff, and that's what I've seen happen. So, those are my three. Enemies, excuses, and exaggerations. But I do want to give this bonus four. I want to give this bonus fourth one, and that's extra shit that nobody asked for. All right. This is what you tend to get from Christians, or what Christians tend to get from their religions. They get enemies, they get excuses, they get exaggerations, and then they get extra shit that nobody really asked for. Like they love giving unsolicited advice, and then just insignificant judgment. And when I say insignificant judgment, it's like judgment about things that they have absolutely no power or interest in even impacting, which definitely makes that judgment not only insignificant, but also irrelevant. But speaking of irrelevant, also irrelevant and often grossly wrong information. I'm going to give an example as I close here. I have a cousin who's deeply religious, and I went over her house one time to help her fix a computer or something. And just somewhere in the conversation, she proceeded to tell me about all of these demonic things that Beyonce is doing. Again, that kind of goes back to exaggeration, because now you are exaggerating your capacity to know what a complete stranger is doing, right? But yeah, so she tells me, yeah, Beyonce's doing all of these demonic things, and she actually tells me that, hey, not only is she doing demonic things, she's cleaning her. She uses the Bible for her period, and I'm just like, why would this information, even if this information was true, why would this information be relevant to you? Who needs this information? How does this information impact your life at all? So there it is. What do I see most Christians getting from their religion? I see them getting enemies, which I say is alarming. I see them getting excuses, and that is problematic. I see them getting the right to exaggerate, and who can trust an exaggerator? Oh, fabulator that you are. And then just a bunch of extra shit that nobody asked about, cared about, or even wanted to talk about, because I damn sure didn't want to know about that, about Beyonce. It's weird. Didn't want to know. Don't care to know. Don't care if it's true. I know I'm almost positive it's not true, but even if it wasn't, that's just something that I'm not even interested in. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this brief video today. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, join the Patreon community, or join the membership, the YouTube membership community. Thank you so much for your time, and until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful.